Last November, Mike and I funded our 5th Airbnb, and yes, we used part of his 401k to make it happen. We launched it this March, and now that it's live, I want to walk you through exactly how we did it. If you're wondering how people are actually funding Airbnbs in 2026, especially once you already have like a property or 2 or 3, I'm breaking down the 3 real ways and the exact one that we used. I'm Berta. I own and operate short-term rentals here in Florida with my husband Mike, and we live full-time in our RV while building this portfolio. And I'm gonna walk you through this like I would any one of my students. Simple, real, and based on what we're actually doing. Here's what nobody tells you. Getting your first property, honestly, not that hard if you've got decent income and credit. But once you get into property 3, 4, and 5, that's where things start to shift. Banks start looking at your debt to income differently. You've got multiple mortgages now, and suddenly the same path that worked before doesn't work anymore. That's actually when most people reach out to me, like, Berta, I've got the income, I've got the savings, but now I'm stuck. So let's break this down, your actual options. Traditional 30-year mortgages rely heavily on your W-2 income and your debt-to-income ratio. And there's also something most people don't realize. There's typically a cap around 10 financed properties. So if your goal is to scale, you will hit a ceiling. But the good news is there are always other ways to play this. All right, so let's talk about option 1, what's called a HELOC. This is where you pull equity from your primary home and use it for your next down payment. This is how a lot of people get into their second Airbnb, but it comes with a variable rate, and it's essentially another monthly payment. So it requires discipline. You've got to make sure that next property performs. Option 2 is a cash out refinance. This is where you refinance your current mortgage and pull out equity as cash. The trade-off here, you're resetting your loan, usually at a higher rate. And mentally, this is where people get stuck. They're like, I don't want to lose my low rate. But sometimes holding on to a low rate can actually cost you bigger opportunities. And this is where things shift. Option 3, DSCR loans. This is honestly my favorite for scaling. DSCR stands for Debt Service Coverage Ratio, which basically means that the property qualifies based on its income, not your personal W-2. So no traditional income verification. They're looking at, does this property cash flow? And yes, you'll typically need around 20 to 25% down. But this is how investors start to scale without being limited by their personal income. So let me show you what we did. We funded our 5th Airbnb using a DSCR loan. Our purchase price was about $320,000. Down payment was 20%, and yes, part of that came from Mike's 401k. Now here's the part that matters. Around 65% occupancy, we're conservatively projecting about $2,500 a month in cash flow. But if this one performs like our first Pensacola property, which has averaged about 82% occupancy over the last couple of years consistently, that number could be closer to $3,500 or even $3,700 a month. That's the difference between buying a property and buying the right property. And here's the biggest mistake I see people make. They chase the lowest interest rate instead of asking which option gives me the best cash flow and leverage. Because sometimes the better rate actually keeps you stuck. So here's a simple way to decide. Ask yourself these 3 things. How much equity do I have access to? How much cash do I have available? And what's my risk tolerance right now? If you've got equity and want to move fast, HELOC could work. If you want to restructure, maybe a cash out refinance. If you're ready to scale based on property performance, then DSCR all the way. Look, I know this can feel overwhelming. This is exactly where most people get stuck. You've got the income, you've got the credit, you're ready. You just don't know which move to make. And I'll tell you this journey is not easy, my friends, but it is possible. Mike and I have walked through the good, the bad, and the ugly building this entire business. And through it all, our faith has been our foundation for sure. That's what guided us every step of the way. You don't need to build someone else's dream, okay? You can build your own, one property at a time. If you want the exact decision tree that we use, comment funds in the comments below and I'll send it to you. See you in the next one.